So let me take a seat, and then I'm going to introduce our first C-suite executive, Johan Lundgren, CEO of easyJet. Come and take a seat here. I'm going to move this one over. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
How's business?
I'm into the final weeks of this financial year, so I will not do any updates on that. But
Okay.
I can refer to the update we did in July, where we said that the summer demand was solid, and easyJet has had a record number of customers for this summer. It's true that the year has, as we also said, been more challenging from an external point of view, and there's been some softening also in the yield environment. But overall, there are a lot of things also to be positive about.
Let's talk about the market more broadly. You are a pan-European operator. You've got bases in a number of different places around Europe. How does the European economy feel right now? Can you give us? I'm not going to get into kind of financial guidance, but can I just give me a sense of what is happening in terms of your expectation from what you see in the data as to how that's going to then translate into demand?
Yes, I think it's definitely, like I said, it's a different environment from what we saw last year. There has been a slowdown in the economy. If you're looking at Germany, Italy as an example, some figures coming out of the UK, which is not, to that extent that positive. So I think that translates into a delayed booking pattern, which we saw for the summer. But having said that, we had, UK domestic was doing well, and France domestic doing well. Beach destinations will suffer a little bit more than others. So it is a mixed picture in there, but it hasn't meant that people have stopped flying. Like I said, we've had a record number of customers this summer. But it has meant that the booking pattern has been delayed, and also it's been more challenging from a yield point of view.
Okay, so how are you as a business dealing with that?
Well, what you're doing is what you're doing in any circumstance. So you make sure that your cost is at an appropriate level. You're making sure that the focus we have done on late yield initiatives has been exercised, and we completed a number of initiatives within that area. We also put in a lot of focus, actually using data primarily as a source for mitigating disruption that exists in the airspace environment when it comes to the delays and the cancellation. The majority of which are not initiated by the airlines themselves, but actually from the inefficiency that exists in the airspace environment.
The ATC issue that we had in France on Sunday, which I experienced myself personally. Yeah,
as an example. And with the help of data, we have been able in Q3, as an example, to cut the cancellations with 2/3. We reduced the costly 3-hour plus delays that we've had with 32%. And that has all been driven by initiatives that we've been using data. So there's a lot of things
Just give some more details on that. How does that actually work?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're looking at the delays, one thing we've been focusing on is the schedule. So I think I was here last year when I said that we want to become the world's most data-driven airline, which sounds really, really boring and really nerdy. But the point is that with the billions of data points we have, 300 plus aircraft as well, we took a look to see that what in the environment, in the performance last year, not only our own performance, but also performance on the routes where we were operating with competitors. Where did we see that we had the biggest bottlenecks? Where did they occur? What time of the day did it happen? And what we then took was also an assessment, also using data, because this is public available information about what is competitor capacity going to be now on all these routes that we are flying. With that, we were able to simulate, different schedules to work out what the performance was going to be from an on-time performance point of view, from a revenue point of view. And using the data in there, we shifted a lot of things within the program when it comes to the fire breaks that we have throughout the day, and just basically moved them around. We did some 52,000 changes to our summer program this year.
Sorry, how many?
52,000 changes to the summer program this year by actually just moving things here and there 5-10 minutes. And that has led to, like I said, the cancellations was down in the Q3 from 2,600 last year to about 840. And you know, the costly, the U261 delays that we saw was down 32%. So that's one example, but then we also went through everything that had to do with the first wave performance. So on the day when we do our first wave, when all, you know, the 327 aircraft, you know, takes off, we can then simulate, given the performance on the first wave, what the performance will be throughout the rest of the day. Because you can see the bottlenecks where they happen. And then you can take also the consideration, you know, the weather forecast that takes that also causes an effect, whether we have issues with air traffic controls in certain area, particularly, you know, the problem areas, Karlsruhe, Marseille as an example, and we can then simulate and do changes on the day, on the schedule, that has a positive effect. So we improve the on-day performance using this, you know, a lot of these algorithms with about, you know, 10 to 30%. So there's a massive amount of opportunities to go for instead of just thinking about, oh, you know, this world is falling apart for all.
No, absolutely. Technology is going to play a huge part.
Yeah.
As we've already kind of talked about, the macro environment is getting more difficult. That's the kind of that's top up here.
Yeah.
But as you say, mitigating the kind of the middle of the P&L factors and having an effect translates to the bottom line. Do you feel, having done that you are just in the foothills of this process? What have you learned? When you start these kinds of things, there's kind of all kinds of unintended things that you figure out.
I mean, it was interesting. I was listening, very interesting about the IBM presentation in there, and when you talked about the failures, I think it was quoted about 70% failures. You know, you need to fail. When you are launching a number of these initiatives, when you're looking at, for instance, the things we've been doing on late yield initiatives, we got 20 different parameters on the algorithms that we're working on. And what we're seeing is that a lot of these tests that we do, they fail. But what you do, you allow it to fail, and then you retract, and then you take the things that is working and you scale it up throughout the whole of the program. So that's one of the learnings. You can't sit and design the perfect algorithm that's just going to, you know, deal with this. You need to launch a number of things and then work it out and what it's going to do. The other learning, I think, was that it doesn't matter how many data analytics people or data scientists you employ. You can have hundreds of them. If the data isn't available, easy, accessible for you to use, and it also is qualitative to the extent that you can use them, they're going to sit and have no work.
Yep.
So you need to start really at the source of getting the data, all these billions of data points that we're talking about, to say, well, actually, you know, how can I use it? How accessible is it? And then also to ask the right questions. I saw there was a picture of Einstein up there. So another quote that he had done, he said that I can solve any problem in the world in 1 hour. 55 minutes, I will ask the right questions, and then I solve the problem in 5 minutes. So I think it's something about that, and also, you know, determine very clearly what problem are you trying to solve, what opportunity are you going after. So you need to be very detailed about that, and then, you know, get on with the nuts and bolts of it.
Do you talk about the data? So my boss, Mike Bloomberg, talks about the fact if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, and you've got to figure out the right kind of inputs to get the right outputs. You talk about having the right data in the first place. What do you mean by that specifically?
Well, the data would be, it's all around you. I mean, if you take a look at all the aircraft, like I said, we got billions of data points coming in from the, you know, each and every one of the aircraft performances on the day.
Is it too much? Do you have too much data?
No, it can't be too much. Can't be too much. And the other thing we talked about in the earlier presentation, that was focusing on the company's own data. What about the data that is accessible, that consists with competitors, that exists from, you know, weather forecasting, that exists from, you know, a whole bunch of different parameters out there that will help you to get, you know, the algorithms in the right place. So I think, you know, and this is nothing to feel that, oh, this is overwhelming, we can't work on that. You work with what you have, and you start small, and you build it, and you fail fast on a number of initiatives, and make sure it is scalable. And I completely agree also that when you are seeing the results of this, you got to trust it to let it flow. You got to trust, because we are so hands-on, within our yield departments and our pricing departments and our planning department, that we want to go in and fix things. Well, actually, if you see that it's working, job done. Now keep monitoring it and also keep improving it. Every algo needs to be continuously evolved and improved, and it's tremendously exciting.
You're pushing into leisure. What does that mean for easyJet?
Well, the easyJet Holidays was actually launched in 2015, but the change in what we're doing is that actually we are now starting to contract our own hotels. And look, the background is very simple. easyJet flies to more leisure destinations than any other European airline. What we've been doing, we've been previously outsourcing the proposition on how we source the hotel and how we are engaging with our customers. That's something that we're now taking back internally. So we're in the process now of signing up some of the best hotels in Europe, and we're going to do a launch of that later in the calendar year. And we're going to use technology in particular to make sure that this is a different proposition than you would see out there.
The leisure market feels like a very tough place right now. There have been some very high-profile failures. Why is now the right moment?
But that is a good moment, isn't it?
Yep, that's what I thought you might say. Why is this? What are they doing wrong that you're going to do better?
Well, let's start with the premise on what we believe we're going to do right. First of all, we have the network. easyJet has more slots in the world than any other airline. We fly to more of these destinations than any other airline. Multiple frequencies per day. We know that one of the things that customers are asking for is to say, look, I want to do something else, perhaps in a 1 week and a two weeks or 10 days holidays. With us, you can fly and choose, the different, flights throughout the days on a number of these destinations. So that's number one. The airline in itself as a core is a fantastic opportunity and a leverage for that. The other thing is also the cost base. We do have a 25-30% lower cost base than a lot of our other competitors, which would translate into value. Because previously, flexibility used to be attached to a higher price. The second part, you're coming down to the hotel point of view, and there's been an enormous interest from the best hotels in Europe to work with us, because they see that we actually are guaranteeing the volumes. We are flying there, and we're not only flying during the summer peak months, we're flying in a number of these destinations on a year-round basis, on a 10-month basis, which will allow us to get access. They're giving us access to these hotels when we need to have them without taking on any commitments. So it's a mix of the flexibility that we're offering and to the value and the quality of the products we're going to do. And we're going to use technology in order to make this come alive.
I was talking to my colleague Chris Jasper at Bloomberg a little bit earlier on. We were trying to figure out kind of what the growth strategy is at easyJet. You've just talked about the kind of the leisure aspect to it, and you're definitely pushing into that. What is the expansion strategy? Is it more routes? Is it trying to figure out how to get more revenue from the customers that you're flying with? Where does the growth come from here for easyJet?
Yeah, first of all, we are a growth company. easyJet has been growing historically with 3 to 8%, every year from a capacity point of view. You're going to see us now to be at the lower end of that spectrum, but that is more a reflection on how we're adapting to the external environment that is there. But our focus is going to continue to be to grow. We talked last year about one metric that I'm extremely focused on, apart from cash, is profit per seat, because I think that there's more we can do to expand what we can do in the market. Holidays is one thing, loyalty program is one thing, what we're doing for our business customers is one thing. We got, this year an estimated 100 million customers flying with us. And we are not at all fulfilling, everything that we see that we can do for them. But that doesn't mean that we don't have, growth opportunities from adding more routes and adding more bases. We can do that. We still have a number of bases where we can add more aircrafts into to reach efficiencies of scale in what we're doing. The efforts we've been doing that's really paid off well of being strong locally in our markets, France as an example, domestically in the regions, has really paid off, and we got a number of these opportunities to go for. When you're looking through the pipeline of, for the next years about, areas and cities and routes that we want to add into, there is no shortage of opportunities.
Okay, let's just kind of wrap things up and talk about the climate and the carbon footprint. An argument I am hearing more frequently now, and you and I talked about this on television a little bit earlier on, is that low cost encourages people to fly not because it's necessary, but because it's cheap. How do you answer that?
I think it's being on the completely wrong side of history to argue that. It makes me upset. Here's the point. You can turn back the clock when flying was for privileged people, when flying was for the people who could afford it, when the choices were limited. That kind of sets the scene of what the argument wants to drive it back to. If you're looking at the efficiency of the models that is out there today, it's actually the low-cost model who has lower carbon emission per passenger and customers than a lot of the legacy carriers that is out there, who is arguing this point. You know, I think it's completely wrong side of the argument. There's no doubt that each and every one of the airlines and the industry must take responsibility, and I think that the sector and the industry must reinvent itself going forward. And I think also there's a number of promising technologies that will help us to do that. I mean, I've been in the job close to 2 years right now, and I know that when I started, I was in some discussions and panels and roundtables with authorities, and there were some people who were questioning whether actually, for instance, electric and hybrid planes would have an impact ever. Today, nobody is saying that it won't. Everybody agrees that, you know, hybrid technology and electrical planes will happen. Now, whether that is 2030, 2035, whether aircraft will be on the size of the 50, 100, and 180, whatever it is, that is more of an argument about timing in a year. So this will happen, this will come. And when it comes to the biofuel, you get a number of promising initiatives in there as well. And that's our responsibility to get onto. But I completely, you know, disagree with the argument to say that this is low-cost airline fault. We are more efficient than a lot of the players who make this case.
I think somebody told me at the Paris Air Show that whipped cream has more energy density than the current battery technology. So kind of trying to put those up in the air, they're heavy things. Talking of...
sorry, just for interrupting in there. There's an assumption also, which is completely wrong, to say, well, you know, if you're looking at the car industry as an example. So it is what it is now, and the batteries are heavy and you know, density and all of that. If you're speaking to any person who works with the automotive industry, they are not happy where they are today. They are looking for the development in this technology to say, well, we're going to need to charge the car here in probably less than a minute. We wanted to have ranges that is, you know, far beyond where we're going today. And that's what the industry is working on.
The impression given, though, is that the car industry is ahead of the airline industry.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes.
That's a fair criticism?
Yes, it is. It is.
And do you feel that is... The mechanics of the a new car is brought out...
When it comes to battery technology,
yeah, it comes. But the cycle of a new car is kind of every 7 years.
Yeah.
The A320... The 737, these are airframes that have been around for a long time. The reinvention is just a little bit slower. Is that what causes this gap, or is it something else?
No, I don't know the difference why they've been, you know, earlier on to this.
But they're ahead of the airline.
Yeah, in terms of because you do have electric cars today out there, you know, running and hybrid.
Is that a perception problem for the airline industry?
I don't think it's necessarily the perception problem starts with if you are saying that you don't have an issue to deal with. The perception problem starts with to say, well, you know what, we're going to leave this to others and things will work out. And that's not what I think anyone in the industry is saying anymore. Certainly we're not doing it. We've been having a partnership with Wright Electric for a number of years on this technology. I was down in Toulouse and met with the CEO of Airbus here on a full day. We spoke only about, you know, the sustainability of aviation and what they're having planned and what our thoughts is on what we're going to do within this area of battery and hybrid and biofuel and so on. So this is absolutely on top of everybody's agenda. And I think it's a necessity for the industry, and if you want to be sustainable, successful also.